Hello, I'm Tara Brabazon, and I'm the Dean of Graduate Studies at Charles Darwin University. Welcome to Outrider 56, Writing Transitions. This is such an exciting moment for this Outrider series, because there is something remarkable and important about writing the transitions between our ideas. The best writers write the best transitions, and they write them in a way that is elegant, precise, and accountable. It was the legendary Bell Hooks who stated that everything interesting happens in the margins, and she was absolutely right. But to rewrite it for our Outrider this week, everything happens in the liminal spaces between ideas where nothing seems to happen. Although credited to Mozart, I found out through my research this week that actually it was Debussy who stated, quote, "The music is not in the notes, but in the silence between them." End of quote. Absolutely brilliant. Similarly, you see, writing is not in the sentences. Writing is not in the paragraphs. It is in the transitions between our ideas. It's making the transitions, the movement itself, meaningful. And Eckhart Tolle, a person I don't usually cite and quote, can I say, made a remarkable, magnificent statement about the gaps and spaces in our lives. And he stated, quote, "Note the gap between two thoughts, the brief, silent space between words in a conversation, or between the notes of a piano or a flute, or the gap between an in-breath and an out-breath. When you pay attention to these gaps, awareness of something becomes just awareness." End of quote. That's riveting. That is brilliant. So instead of being aware of something, oh, there's something happening, actually one sits in the awareness, and the awareness in and of itself becomes meaningful. Fabulous statement. So we talked in our Outrider on sentences, and to a certain extent in our Outrider on paragraphs, about the importance of leaving your scaffold in place. So leaving the architecture of your writing, leaving the construction of your sentences in place for review and assessment by your reader. It's honest, it's precise, it's rigorous. And it also, you see, and this is what we're adding this week, it also allows your readers to sit in a space of reflection and a space of understanding, a space indeed of awareness. Brian Froud made the great comment that changed my life when I did the research for this Outrider, and he stated, quote, "What you should illustrate is the space between the words. It's the betweenness, the otherness that gives depth and dimension." End of quote. Wow. Brilliant. So as you can see, we've got to now start to think about the spaces in between our words, our sentences, and our paragraphs, the work we've done in the last 3 weeks. So we're starting to look at the space between ideas so that your ideas can sparkle. You see, what we're engaging with in the second half of this writing series is how we enable your readers to understand your work, to follow you on your intellectual journey. And the way that they follow you is through attention to transitions. So this really matters. Now, there are two types of transitions. There's the transitions within a paragraph and the transitions between paragraphs. These two transitions have very different impacts on your readers. The in-paragraph transitions move your readers gently through your ideas. So they see how, remember, a sentence is defined by one sentence, one idea. So in between, in a paragraph, the transitions allow your reader to follow you between each idea. Tremendous. These are very subtle, and these are very, very careful transitions and very difficult to write. Then we've got the transition between your paragraphs that is there to inform your reader about the movement in the argument. Crucial. So each sentence expresses one idea, one sentence, but each paragraph takes one idea for a walk. And the effectiveness of that walk is determined by the transitions. So when we move an idea through a series of arguments, then that's when we start to form paragraphs, and arguments are formed through those transitions. This is very, very delicate and difficult work. Now, there are weak ways and there are strong ways to build these relationships between your paragraphs. And I'm not really being connotative there. I'm not being nasty, going weak, pathetic, embarrassing. I'm just saying they're easier and we all use them, but there are more challenging, difficult and stronger ways to make transitions, but they're much more difficult. So we're going to talk about both today. So if you're just getting into the groove and going, transitions, I never thought about transitions, let me give you what are often called weak transitions or the easier transitions. Now, there are 4 modes of transitional words, 4 different modes. Okay, so pick which one of these modes of transitional words you're going to deploy. The first transitional word is for emphasis. So stressing that something is really important. So these transitional words are like undoubtedly, unquestionably, obviously, particularly, clearly. Strong words, right? So this is important, importantly. So you're confirming it, right? So the second way is if you want to signal a transition to add ideas to your argument. So you're making an argument and you want to reinforce or make that argument stronger, you use words like furthermore, also, moreover, along with, and in addition to. Right, that's great. So you're making an argument, you want to bolster it, they're the words to use. Important transitions, those ones, reinforce your argument. Now, if you want to sort of alter the pace of your argument, so you've made an argument, but you want to sort of get a bit excited and you want to alter the pace through a transition, then you use words like conversely, strong word, conversely, alternatively, whereas, different from or differing from, and unlike. Strong words. So we're moving stuff around here. Come on, come with me, team. We're moving an argument. Fantastic. Now, the 4th mode of transition I despise, but I will talk about it, and it's when one presents arguments in order. So we see following on from, or firstly, secondly, thirdly, finally. So they're the first words of your paragraph. Thirdly, fourthly, okay, but you use finally, subsequently, before. Okay, so that's a way of doing a transition. If you've got arguments, you can start your paragraph with firstly, secondly, thirdly. But it's available. Okay, so if you want the easy transitions, you want to go, oh, right, I've just thought about transitions, this is great. Those 4 strategies and that suite or collection of words will enable the transitions of your prose. That's great, tremendous. If that'll do you for today, have a cup of coffee, see you next week, great. These are simple words, but they have great power to move your argument. Brilliant. But we also talked about a stronger way of making transitions, more meaningful way of making transitions. So how do you make the gaps and the spaces in your writing, in your argument, in your research? How do you make the spaces meaningful? The answer is what we're going to talk about now in terms of these very, very complicated transitions, so that you, with reflection, summon the spine or the scaffold of your argument and you make it available for your reader to assess. So there are 4 key questions that all of us ask about every single paragraph that we write. So before we can think about what the more intricate transitions are like, we have to look at what is this paragraph actually doing. And there are 4 questions that we ask of our paragraphs. The first one is the easy one. What's the point of this paragraph? Girlfriend, what are we doing in this paragraph? So are we introducing an idea? Are we persuading the reader? Are we adding some evidence to the argument? Are we perhaps enacting repetition to add emphasis? So actually ask, what is the point of this paragraph? The second question to ask is, does the idea expressed in this paragraph connect with or support any other argument in this article or chapter? So this is a very important one, really. These are very important paragraphs. Is this paragraph building connections throughout the document? So is this a connector paragraph? I often call these the muscle of a piece, right? So ask if there's some hard yakka happening here, a connector paragraph. Terrific. The third question is, does the idea expressed in this paragraph present something that's sort of a bit different or alternative? These are wonderful paragraphs and important paragraphs for research colleagues, because it's so important that you don't just go, I've got a vibe, I've got subjectivity, let me just tell you my argument. The best, the most rigorous of research is able to say, right, well, I've made an argument here, but you know what? There's all this research that radically disagrees with me. Great, important paragraphs to present. So that's when you do the conversely, right? So I've made this argument in this piece, in this chapter, in this article, and I also want to acknowledge that these great scholars disagree with me, and this is how they disagree with me. So if you've got a paragraph where you're offering the alternative, great and important paragraph. Now, the fourth diagnostic question of a paragraph is perhaps the most important, particularly in a big document like a PhD or indeed a scholarly monograph. And that fourth question is, wow, this is important. Is the idea that I'm talking about in this paragraph separate from or really different from everything else I'm talking about in this chapter or article? So basically what you're showing, this is so important, does this paragraph not fit? So ask yourself, is this paragraph doing something weird, right? And then all you simply do is you scoop that paragraph out, or that page, you scoop it out and you put it in what I describe for my file system as the outtakes file. So something doesn't fit, doesn't mean you delete it, you just scoop it up, it doesn't go there, put it somewhere else, and it may be the starter yogurt for another piece that you write. But that's important. So if you just got a weird paragraph that doesn't belong there, remove it. So that's an important diagnostic. So when you ask these 4 questions of every single paragraph that you write, wow, your writing will transform. So transitions have often been described as the glue that holds writing together. And that's a really poor, and I would argue inaccurate metaphor, because a glue occupies space, right? The best transitions, and indeed the best writers of transitions, sit in the space. They sit in the gap. They ask these diagnostic questions of paragraphs, and then they render the gap meaningful for their argument. You see, the writers who write the best transitions are the best writers, because writing transitions is the most difficult component of writing. If you have difficulty with your transitions, then you'll know about it through a series of proxies. So if you can't write transitions, and most people can't, if you can't write transitions, then somebody in your life, whether it be a peer reviewer, a reader, your supervisor, a mate, will say stuff to you like, oh gee, there's a jump there. Oh gee, no, that's I'm not following you. What's happening in this paragraph? What's happening here? What's the link? Oh, this is a bit choppy. Jump, 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 jump. what's the relationship between these ideas? So if ever you get that sort of comment from a supervisor or a mate or a referee, you know you've got a transition issue. And almost all students I've ever supervised, at some point I do a comment, there's a jump here. What's the relationship between these paragraphs, right? That is a transition issue. So remember, this is not a catastrophic issue, but it is important that you recognize it, because the caliber of your research and your writing will be held back if you can't write these productive transitions. You need to sit in the gap, be cool in the gap, and write the transition. You see, what happens is the best of writers build an argument through their transitions. They don't hop about and hope that a reader will follow them, because the reader won't. We have to sit in that gap and we have to write the transitions. And this is what creates great writing. Can I say, one of the drafts I do, and I do about 30 plus drafts of every piece of work before I send it out to other humans to read. And one of those drafts, which takes the longest, right near the end, is I sit in the gap and I work carefully the transition. So a whole draft is looking at the transitions. You see, what happens is great writing that's spent time working the transitions is a pleasure to read for readers, because what's happening is they enter your prose and there's like a tour guide that guides them through your prose and through your ideas. And if you think about it, what we're actually doing and why it's so important to research and why we need to talk about this particularly for you as a researcher, is the meta question is, how do we move between old ideas and new ideas? And we need to do that in research. We need to be honest, we need to be transparent, and we need to be rigorous. In my less classy language, I often describe this as showing the underwear under the frock. Okay, that's what transparency is in research. We need to show how we have come to this idea, and readers, examiners, need to be able to verify and check those steps. So we show the scaffolding, we show the transition. And this is where we start to write about comparison or contradiction, agreement and disagreement, cause and effect. And we start to explore and elaborate. So we don't miss a rung on the ladder. We make sure that all the rungs are in place, and we provide instructions about how we move up that ladder. Now, I know that good transitions are incredibly uncomfortable. They're very, very difficult to write. But what the great writers do is that we become comfortable in the discomfort. In fact, when people ask me what great writing is, I describe it as that. We are comfortable sitting in the discomfort. And you see, what follows from that being comfortable in the discomfort is excellence, rigor, precision emerges. Because what happens is our transitions are meaningful, our transitions are honest. We have to explain what we mean, and we have to justify every step in our argument. And of course, that is the foundation of scholarly excellence. I wish you love, light, and peace. Tea out.